to include companies that had affiliates located in the state of Georgia or partners located in the state of Georgia, even though they did not have a physical presence. Currently, what this bill does is it expands that physical nexus to a definition of economic nexus, and it's based on the premise that if I have enough transactions in the state of Georgia, or if I sell enough product in the state of Georgia, that I have a significant connection to the state of Georgia that is equivalent to having a physical nexus. There are two reasons to pass this bill. Number one, it levels the playing field because our people who have businesses in this state are at a competitive disadvantage because they have to sell their product and collect sales tax on it, which raises their product in most cases to 7%, that the people that are located outside of the state of Georgia and selling that same product do not have to pay. These businesses that are located in the state of Georgia are paying ad valorem tax, they're paying wages, and they are paying sales taxes, and those are all benefiting the state of Georgia, and yet they're having to compete with people who don't pay any of these things in the state of Georgia. So it's a level the playing field is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is that, quite frankly, because of the use tax, this is tax that is already owed in the state. It is just not being collected. So it's not a new tax. It is an existing tax, but this is a mechanism to collect that existing tax. The fiscal note that we received, which is just an estimate, estimates that we are foregoing currently $274 million at the state level and $205 million at the local level because of lost sales taxes and use taxes through internet sales. So anyway, I would be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Chairman Powell?
Number 12.
Chairman Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a practical question on the redefinition. I see this has changed substantially since its first to capture.
Into your mic.
I'm not on.
You're on, but you got to talk into it.
Oh, well. I think if I get any closer, I'll need to give it a ring. That was inferring kissing them. No, seriously, Mr. Chairman, I know you're creating that economic nexus that you were talking to, and I apologize. I was trying to look at the chairman while I was speaking into the microphone as well. On M2, I guess I'm concerned at how the retailer or how the department would ascertain toward the end they're stored or for use or consumption in. If a retailer is selling into North Augusta, how are they to know that ultimately that product may be, brought into Augusta, into Georgia to be used? Just as a practical matter, how would a retailer ascertain if their products that are being sold into a different state were being used in Georgia?
Well, if you're talking about a sale over the internet, if you drive across the river and buy it, they aren't going to know that. But if somebody were to ship it into the state of Georgia, then obviously you're selling it to someone in the state of Georgia. And so the retailer is obligated to, under this bill, the retailer is obligated to do one of two things. They are obligated to either collect the tax and remit the tax if the sale is made to an address in Georgia. But they are also obligated, even if they don't collect and remit the tax, they are obligated to fill out a use tax form, mail it to the customer, and also mail a copy of it to the Department of Revenue. As far as the enforcement of it by the department, then that will be something that the department will have to determine, but it's not how it's to be enforced is not included in this legislation.
Mr. Chairman, let me apologize. The original bill, you actually have added language to a location in the state of Georgia in the part we have before the committee. That was my question before. That didn't have to a location in Georgia to be used in Georgia. I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for Chairman Powell? A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. The committee is now yours again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I take it.
It always will.
All right, the next item is House Bill 73. We're operating off of LC 345090S. Chairman Houston.
Chairman, this bill is known as the Rural Bill, the Revitalization of Undeveloped Rural Areas legislation. And I grew up in a rural area in Georgia, and I have seen over the years how the disappearance of towns all over South Georgia and in fact, in some places in North Georgia. And I had the opportunity to talk to Commissioner Knowles, who grew up in Moultrie, and she's seen the same thing of vanishing some towns in Georgia. You might call it the vanishing of Georgia, or vanishing of rural Georgia. And so I've been working with the Department of Community Affairs, and we came up with this bill, and it gives tax credits, investment credits, and rehabilitation credits if you'll go into a area in a rural area of less than 15,000 people, and this does include over 460 plus towns in Georgia. And it gives us, the job credit gives a $2,000 job credit for 2 full-time equivalent jobs. You get $2,000 up to 5 years, not to exceed $200,000. The investment credit is for 25%, not to of the purchase price of the old building you buy to rehabilitate, to bring jobs back and bring a storefront back on whether it be on the square or be in a designated place. It's designated by the Department of Community Affairs. And the next credit is a rehabilitation credit, and it pays 50% to do the building over up to $75,000. And our goal is to bring back life to rural downtown and draw back people into the heart of the community. And I think that I really hope that we can see a change and bring and help rural Georgia bring back some life to the downtown. Do I have any questions?
Are there any questions? Would it be fair to say, Chairman, that the bill has a tax credit that incentivizes purchases in downtowns, has a tax credit that incentivizes rehabilitation of those buildings that are purchased in downtown, and also has a tax credit for employment that is created in downtown, but you don't get any of those three possible credits unless you create jobs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. All right, any other questions? What's the pleasure of the committee? All right, there's a motion and a second. Do pass. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes to rules.
Kiss my foot.
All right, Representative Watson present House Bill 117. We're operating off of LC 430453, or have we got a different LC number?
Different one.
Tell me.
Refresh our screens.
All right, for those of you who are operating off the iPad, you need to refresh your screen. We're operating off of LC 430559S, and it has a technical grammatical change, and that's all. And Representative Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, bring before you HB 117, and all we're doing here is removing the voluntary contribution portion of ticket sales. So if you attend an event and the ticket price is $75 and you write a check for $100, you would not be taxed on the people would not be taxed on the $100, only the 75 portion.
Mine didn't refresh. All right, are there questions? For those of you who are like me and you did not, were not successful in refreshing, what has changed in this version on line 11, the original version removed made to places of, and this version only removes made to, so that it reads for admission to places of amusement, sports, etc. So it's a grammatical change, not a substantive change. Are there any questions of the author? What is the pleasure of the committee? All right, there's a motion and a second. Do pass. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes to rules. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 11, I'm sorry I didn't catch this until just now, but there appears to be both a dash and a comma instead of a semicolon. I don't know that that matters. Oh, it's the strike of a. Okay, because it was looking, I was trying to figure out what punctuation that was. All right. Very good. Thank you.
They didn't have dash and commas that were like on the same spot.
No, sir.
Ah.
Thank you.
All right, Chairman Stevens, present House Bill 125. We're operating off of LC 430558S.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an attempt to try to lure a brand new industry to coastal Georgia. This basically says that if you have a yacht that has a refit that costs more than $500,000 per refit, that amount above $500,000 will be exempt from sales tax. We did something very similar to the airline industry, and I would ask this committee for favorable consideration. There will be nothing like this on the east coast of the U.S. It'll create several hundred jobs as well.
All right, Bruce Williamson.
So to the author, thank you for bringing this bill, but I'd just like to clarify that it's not limited to yachts.
No, sir. Anything that has a refit that floats in the water that costs more than $500,000 to refit is eligible.
So this is not a millionaire yacht bill per se. It's going to grow jobs that are otherwise not coming to Georgia, but it would also include any kind of ocean cargo vessels and such. Large, expensive vessels will be able to come to Georgia and get this effective tax break, but we're not giving up anything because we're not collecting those taxes now.
Essentially got almost a zero fiscal note. So we're not giving up anything at all today. That's a very good point. This is a new industry.
Thank you for bringing this bill.
Chairman Knight.
Just a follow-up and clarification of what Chairman Williamson said. This is where the port and the coast of Georgia is getting to be very, very busy with our ports. We're getting these mega ships coming in. The mechanics, the engines on these things are more than most buildings. I mean, it's very expensive. So that's what we're drawing into this.
And I appreciate that. And
big energy worldwide. All these ships that are coming into our ports.
Georgia's own Caterpillar would benefit as well.
Representative Buckner.
Representative Stevens, I just want to say thank you for adding the section, the lines 24 through 28, where we had the metrics put in there. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a good bill.
Any other questions? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Second.
All right, there's a motion second, do pass. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes to rules.
I like adding that in there.
All right, next on the agenda is Spencer Fry, present House Bill 142. We're operating off of LC 430552S.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is a department bill. Basically, it gives them some tools that they can combat the fraudulent tax returns that have been going on for the past couple of years. It's a sister bill to one we passed recently, House Bill 742. But this just gives a little bit of incentive for companies to get their paperwork to their employees in a timely manner. Based on some fines, $10, $20, and $50. And we did put some caps on there. And this is, the chamber's okay with it, and the department wants it to pass.
I'm sure that they're probably employees that also want it to pass, because as I understand it, the department waits till they get the W-2 to match it up against the tax returns before they will issue the refunds. And so if an employee files his or her tax return on January 31 and the W-2 doesn't show up from the employer until February the 28th, then there's going to be a delay in issuing that refund. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And what the folks without conscience would do is file a tax return in your name, and the feds and the state government were unable to match that with the W-2. And so they would give money away, and then you'd file your real tax return and it wouldn't be there. They say, we already filed it for you. So it'll help out the workers of the state a bunch.
Okay. Are there any questions? What's the pleasure of the committee? There's a motion second, do pass. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes to rules. Representative Harrell, tell us about HB 195.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 195 is a bill that we passed 164-0 in the House last year, didn't make it all the way through the Senate. It modifies our existing law to allow, via voter referendum, an expansion of property tax exemptions for homes for the mentally disabled that are directly owned by an LLC but wholly owned by a nonprofit. We have a situation in Metro Atlanta where a nonprofit provides 69 beds for people with mental disabilities, and they went into a partnership with a for-profit LLC to do renovations to the building. And that partnership, even though the LLC was simply there to help contribute to the value of the property for these residents, it excluded them from their existing property tax exemption. So what this bill does, it allows by voter referendum that partnership between the nonprofit and the LLC for very specific purpose to retain that property tax exemption. The last 2 years, this particular home that houses these people that are mentally challenged incurred about $40,000 a year in property taxes. So that's a pretty significant amount for a nonprofit to absorb over the past 2 years. That is the bill. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Are there questions? What's the pleasure of the committee? All right, there's a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes to rules. We are adjourned.